Okay, the first thing we ask everybody is, what's your name, where you were born, and when you were born?
Oh, Elmer McGinty. I was born 27th of December 1923 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Did you grow up there?
Yes, till I was 17 and joined the Air Force, joined the Army Air Corps.
Where were you December 7th, 1941?
I was out of Lowry Field, laying on my bunk. On a Sunday it was. That's when I heard it on the radio.
So you joined before.
Yeah, I was in January 41.
What made you join?
Well, my brother and I both joined together. We just, wanted to do something. Went down and I went with him and I got in before he did, but we enlisted together actually. I mean, I was approved before he was, even though I was underage. I had just turned 17, he had just turned 18. So we came out to Lowry Field and I was there for over a year and did all kinds of things. We could wear civilian clothes, of course, off the base before the war started.
What were you aiming for when you went into service? Were you trying to get into the Army Air Corps, or were you trying to just go into service?
Well, no, we were trying to get in the Air Corps. We didn't think we'd get in because neither one of us had graduated from high school. But they took us. So, that's what we wanted, yeah.
There's no problem with age, with you being just 17?
Well, my mother had already changed my birth certificates. She had forged it so I'd get working papers. So it was already changed. But then, of course, later on I had to tell them, set the record straight, so they'd have my right age, But that's how I got in, yeah.
Well, what did you do at Lowry? Yeah.
I did all kinds of things. I was, they assigned me to an AT-6 at first, just kind of washing it and fueling it and different things like that. Then I worked for aerodrome maintenance. And they sent me out to Buckley when they first started building Buckley Field. And that's about what I did then, yeah. Cleaned the runways off of snow with a grader in the wintertime. And then they, in 42, they transferred us to Kearns, Utah, my brother and I. Well, one of the things, I was coming back from town one day with a friend, buddy, in the middle of the night, and he said, let's go into break in the administration building and see what they got on our service records. Because I'd already had a court-martial, but I got out of it. I was acquitted. And so he got them out, and he took a little piece of paper and clipped it and said, do not separate to my brother and I's service records. So we stayed together most of the time. So we went to Kearns and was up there about 7 months. And then we both volunteered for gunnery school. Went to Las Vegas for gunnery school. And then we came back at the beginning of 43 to Lowry Field and both went through armament school. And then we went from there, we went to Oklahoma City and we were training in A-20s, 2-engine attack bombers. And that's where I got my name Lucky, because I knew you were going to ask me it anyhow. So, yeah, we didn't have much to do because they didn't have too many planes and there was a lot of us. And our captain was called off the field for some kind of a family emergency. And they put this second lieutenant in charge. He just got out of OCS. And he put all kinds of rules out, just ridiculous rules. You had to walk at a certain place. You couldn't go into barracks between like 5 or 6 in the morning and 8 at night. And you had to stand in line on the mess hall and, just all kinds of knickknacks. So he just either he'd walk around or he'd have an MP walking around trying to find you doing something. So he'd call a bunch of us in and he'd just line us up and say, well, what's your name, rank, and serial number? And you're now a private. we were all sergeants, staff sergeants, you know. So he had called me in, of course he busted me. And about a week later, he called me in again with a bunch of guys, and I was on the end when I went in. So when he got to me, he said, you know, name, rank, and serial number. I said, what do you got me in for? You already busted me. I'm already a private. So he grabbed my hair and said, I told you to get a haircut, and I hit him. So, of course, all hell broke loose, and they put me under arrest of quarters. And so a couple weeks later, the captain came back, and he found out what was going on, and he called me in, and he said, I know what happened. He said, would you he said, I had a talk with him, because he had threatened to, you know, send me to Leavenworth. I had a talk with him, and we had an agreement, if you'll go and apologize and accept squadron punishment, we'll drop the court-martial. I said, okay. So I went back and apologized to him, and he had me scrub his floor. It was about, you know, 8 by 9 or something for 7 days. Even had to get a toothbrush in the cracks. So that's when they started calling me Lucky. So it's not a very pretty story, but
It probably wasn't totally unusual that some of those young lieutenants were.
yeah, it was. But the captain had already had service overseas, and you know. So then they, before we finished our training there, they decided they needed a push on heavies, and they transferred us to B-17s down Texas. That's when I started our crew, and we had 50 crews there training in Peyote, and then we had 8 men on the crew then, and then we went to Delhart and picked up the other 2 men on the crew and finished our training there. Then we went to St. Louis, you know, Scott Field, and then to Kilmer, because they didn't have planes. So we all went over, 50 crews of us went over on the Queen Elizabeth. And we docked in Glasgow, and they picked me out of all the guys to stay there and unload the boat. I had between 35 and 40 Puerto Rican soldiers under me. Only one of them could speak English. So we were there 2 weeks unloading the boat. So then I had to catch up with my crew, and I stopped at an RAF base on the way, and they gave me 2 pair of gloves. I still have the 1 pair, they're just like new yet. And then I caught up with my crew and started training and started our missions. My first mission was the 30th of December, and I flew 29 missions. 4 to Berlin, 2 to Poland, flew 2 in 1 day before D-Day, and flew in about 16, 17 different planes, and 12 of them went down before I finished. 1 went down the next day after I flew in it. So I don't know what else you want to know, but
My gosh, all of those missions, though, what, you know, just kind of describe a little, what was the worst mission that you flew?
well, it's hard. There was 3 or 4 that were really bad. The 1 Poland mission, and the Paris, my second mission, we were told to bomb it at 12:30. Of course, everybody couldn't bomb it at 12:30, but you know, it's close. They warned everybody to be out of the factory. So I didn't arm the bombs until we were on the bomb run. And I was in the bomb bay when it was about 24,000 feet. When we dropped our bombs, and 2 of the 500-pounders, they got crisscrossed in the bomb bay down by the doors, didn't go out. So I had to jump down within a split second and throw them out, you know, because we didn't want to drop the bombs right on Paris. We wanted to bomb the factory. So we got back. My pilot and my bombardier wanted to recommend me for the Silver Star, but I wouldn't let them because it was my job, and it was only my second mission, and I didn't want to, you know, get involved in anything like that. So And then we went to Rostock, and that was in the big week. I think it was the 24th of 22nd or 24th of February. I flew 4 missions in that week. And we were coming back, and of course they were waiting for us. They knew we had to come back over Denmark. And they were laying back with the 2-engine attack planes and shooting rockets at us. And one of them exploded over top of the plane and opened the dinghy doors. And the dinghies, of course, they inflate immediately. They have gas in them, you know. And they come back and tore our vertical stabilizer off. But we made it back. I think we had an engine out too, but we made it back. And of course, the first Berlin raid, the big one on March 6th, we lost 69 planes on that raid, and we were shot up pretty bad on there. And the 16th was to Augsburg, and we had our nose shut off and had to come back on the treetops and knocked our oxygen out. Almost killed our bombardier and our navigator, our top turret gunner. Knocked a couple engines out, but we made it back too. So that was some of the rough ones.
Well, you're talking about treetops. You really had to be going low then.
Yeah, that was the safest place when you're by yourself, you know, because they don't want to come down that low.
It sounds like the B-17 could take quite a bit of
Oh,
damage
yeah.
and still stay in the air.
Oh yeah, there was very few missions that we didn't have some damage. A lot of holes, you know, from flak and 20 millimeters. Lost a lot of engines. So
When you had the 2 bombs crossed down there that didn't go out, what was that like? What altitude? And
we were 24,000 feet. Well, you know, I didn't realize at the time, but I've gotten the record since. And we actually bombed it at, I think, 14 minutes after 12. And we were 24,000 feet. And I just straddled and tossed them, you know, pushed them out. Because you couldn't wear your oxygen, or you couldn't have a parachute on, you know, to get down in there. But I got out quick and got the oxygen back on. We had a portable oxygen bottle, you know. But
How dangerous was it to be able to do that without falling out?
well, you don't think about it, you know. The airs rush again, you know, but you just don't think about it. You just do it, you know. And then one time, I don't know whether I mentioned it already, but we had incendiary bombs, and they were like a cylinder, like an octagon shaped, and they had a cluster of them to make up 100 pounds. And we carried them, and to double the load, they would wire an extra bomb to each station around the other bomb, so that when the shackle opened up, the 2 bombs would fall together. But 2 of the stations they wired over the shackle, so that when we dropped our bombs, 4 of the bombs stayed in there because they were wired to the shackle. So I had to get in and take the wire cutter and cut them, and then drop them through the bomb bay, you know, from up higher, you know, aim them through. So that was another experience I had.
was that in your job description?
Yeah. Well, you know, I was the first armor, so that made me the assistant bombardier. And I was also the assistant radio man. So.
I've never heard about things like that because, you know, you hear about people going over and dropping bombs, but never the fact that something could malfunction like that or just be...
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, there's guns malfunction. You have to fix them in the air, you know. All kinds of things can happen, you know.
What kind of problems did you have with fighter planes? We knew about a lot of the flak, but fighter planes?
Oh, yeah, we had lots of them. You know, they were... As soon as we start going into Germany, even in France, yeah, I've seen as high as, well, estimate, you know, 100, 150 planes in the air, you know, that you could see, you know. Not all attacking us, but attacking other, you know, there was other groups besides us out there, you know. but they'd roll right through the formation. You know, the later missions mostly they attacked from the front. You know, because they had more speed and they get in and out faster. So yeah, they were good pilots. Yeah, they got us close so you could see them sometimes. Yeah, they weren't afraid of us. Well, you know, they couldn't afford to be. You know, they had to, that was their job too. Yeah.
It has to be something actually seeing the face of one of these guys going by.
Yeah, it was fast, but you seen them, you know. And they would throw if they had a chance, they'd throw their belly up because it was armor plated underneath, you know. So the one that I got credit for, I knocked the tail off, so that I know I got him, you know. So.
You were the armor gunner?
Mm-hmm.
So were you, what were you doing typically while the combat was going on? Were you working with the other gunners and keeping their guns?
If they had trouble, yeah, if they had trouble. And if they hadn't been to armor school, you know, I had to go check them out. But mostly, it was on my own gun, left waist gun. And till the action was over, then you do things, you know. But then we test fired them on the way over, you know, over the channel. And if we had any trouble then I would check them out, you know. They would fire 800 rounds a minute. I mean, you had to train to just flip that switch, flip that trigger. Yeah, just barely touch it, just so you would send off maybe 5 to 8 rounds, because all the rest are wasted. You know, everything's going so fast that if you don't get them in those, and you have to lead the planes depending on how fast they're going. And if you didn't get them in that first 5, 8 shells, you're not going to get them. That's why we quit using tracers, because the guys were watching the tracer, and the tracer weren't accurate, and then they'd hold the trigger down too long and waste the ammunition. So they did away with the tracers because they were just a waste. They had one every maybe 5, 8 shells would be a tracer, and you see that red flash going out, but they didn't have the same trajectory as a normal shell because of being a tracer, see? So we got rid of that.
So you just had to learn how to fire the short bursts.
That's absolutely. And of course, being a waist gunner too, you don't have much of a range, you know, without shooting your own wings or shooting another plane. So you have to really be careful and just flip that gun, you know. You can't get too excited and just hold her down, because you'll hit another plane, one of your own planes, or hit your own wing or something, you know. Because it would just swing out of your control, you know. So.
We also had to consider fuel then, because going over it, you still
Yeah.
had other
Yeah.
needs, you know, to
Yeah.
climb back.
Oh yeah, sure. That's why they limit us to how many shells, you know, by weight. Sometimes the pilot would even get them to take a couple bombs off so they could put more bullets on. When we were going into Berlin or something, you know, that's a long distance, and try to get more ammunition on there. So, because they only loaded you with the fuel that they thought you would use on a mission, you know. They didn't want any extra weight.
Were they pretty accurate with that? And nobody ran into problems running out of fuel?
Oh yeah, it depends, you know, if you have to be diverted. You know, we had some had a ditch, you know, in the North Sea, or had to land in another field when they got to England, you know, closer to the channel. Just pick the first place to go land, you know. Yeah, that was a problem.
Did you have some rough landings coming back when your planes were shot up?
Every landing's a good one. You know, you make it down, every landing's a good one, you know. We had to shoot flares out when we had wounded on board, you know. they would give you priority to come in. But no, pilots knew how to bring them down, even on a couple engines. Yeah. Yeah, any landing you walk away from is a good landing, you know.
Especially there.
Yeah,
What do you think of the B-17? Is that
it's a fine airplane. I mean, I'm glad I flew in them. You know, they took a beating, I'll tell you. But after I was finished, I didn't want to fly for a while. I never got in a plane until, I think, 1965 after that. I didn't have no desire to get on a plane.
What's your reaction when you see a flying B-17 like the one out here now?
I think it's still a pretty plane. I think it's still nice to watch flying, and it just seems to glide, you know. And they come in so smooth and slow for a landing. It's a nice airplane. A lot different like a B-26. I never flew in one, but they say they were really pretty hard to fly and hot. Yeah.
Have you been up inside this one?
Not this one, no. I was in the fuddy-duddy, and I was in the 909. I took a ride in the 909 when I was here. My 30th mission. Out of Jeffco, you know. That's a nice plane, too. Yeah.
What was that feeling like after actually getting up into one of them? What went through your mind when you were flying that time?
You mean
The 909 when you
it was quite an experience. Somebody talked me into it, and we went up early, and it was an odd feeling, especially get down in the nose, which I had never spent much time in the nose. You know, I got in training just a couple times just to see what it was like, but it was interesting to get up in that nose and see the view from the nose and what they had, you know. Went up over the boulder and over the Flatirons, and it was a nice experience. Hear those engines, and yeah, I enjoyed it. But like I said, I kissed the ground when my last mission was with a strange crew, and when I got back, it was Berlin. I jumped out and kissed the ground, and that was it. I didn't want to go on a plane for a long time.
You mentioned you flew with a lot of different crews. Was that
No, not different crews.
Oh, different crews, different planes.
Different
the same
plane.
crew, different planes, right?
Different planes, yeah. 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 I only flew 3 planes, my last 3 missions with different crews. I found out later why. My pilot flew an extra mission during Big Week. I didn't find that out till a few years ago. In fact, he was already dead. I was looking through the records, and I think he must have flew with the 100th group or something. They needed an extra pilot or something, because he didn't fly with our crew. So he actually flew 5 missions, the whole 5 missions in the last week in February, where the crew flew 4 with him. He was anxious to get done too, you know. So when they changed it from 25, this is what I surmised, when they changed it from 25 to 30, he already had an extra mission in, so he only had to fly 28. And of course, one of them wasn't with us anyhow. See, so he actually only flew 27 with us. And I missed a mission. My nickname was the Lord Mayor of Norwich, because I was in Norwich all the time. And I had signals with the charge of quarters where I'd call up and he'd tell me what kind of flag was out. They had a red, blue, and white flags, you know, just a metal flag. And red meant that there was definitely a mission. Blue meant that there was a mission scheduled, but it could be canceled because of weather or something. And white meant there was absolutely no mission. Well, I called up, and by my signal, I knew there was a mission. So I caught the last train back, and I got in about 12 o'clock, a little before 12, into Dis, and there was no trucks, because it was about 10 miles from Dis, and they had trucks that met every train, to take you back to the field. No trucks, and I waited and waited and waited, and no trucks come till about 5 in the morning. And I was fit to be tired. I said, I'm supposed to be on a mission. And the driver said, well, they've been using us to run the guys to the mess hall and to the planes. He said, they scheduled a practice mission at 1 o'clock. So what they did is they went up, put all the crews together, went up and flew a practice mission, and then come back and never even landed. Flew to Brunswick. And of course I didn't make it. Had to go out there and sit on the runway and sweat them out for the whole day. But they made it back. So that was one extra mission I had to fly, see. And then with my pilot flying one without us, and then me having to fly one more mission because he only flew. So I had my last 3 missions, I flew with somebody else. 2 in one day. 2 7-hour missions in one day.
Where were those?
Into France. They were, but they were 7 hours. That was just about a month before D-Day. So.
2 in one day sounds like quite a challenge.
Yeah, it was, especially with strange crew,
What kind of confidence level did you have if you were going on with people that you didn't know?
Well, it wasn't as great, I'll tell you. Especially if maybe a couple of them get arguing over the intercom or something, newer crews, and I had a great crew, no doubt about it. I just love my pilot, I'll tell you. Yeah, he was. Yeah, we had a great crew.
Did you keep in touch with your old crew after the war?
No, because I stayed over there for about 4 months as an instructor, gunnery instructor, so I lost track of them all. And I didn't know that they had any organizations or anything until we went, in 1985, my brother, he had went back into service and had retired, and he got an invitation to the 50th anniversary of the B-17, and he said, well, you're invited too. So we went up, and that's when I run into my bombardier, not my bombardier, but my navigator and my bomber, and my pilot, and my second radio man. And that's when I found out that my bombardier was still living. I don't know did I tell you that story or not? I don't want to be repeating myself.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We, on the Augsburg mission, when we had our nose shut off, he was all full of shrapnel when we came back. And they transferred him to London, to the hospital in London. And after I finished my missions, I went to headquarters, inquired. I said, I want to go see him, when I found out I was going to stay over there. And they told me he was dead. So I never attempted to find him. And then, of course, I come back to the States in September and never seen any of my crew. And so that's when I found out that my navigator had went to see his wife. He thought he was dead too. And he had been best man at his wedding while we were in training. And they'd come up to Denver to get married. And so he went to go see her up in Massachusetts. And he found out he was living. Had 2 grown sons, and so I got to see him then at a couple of our reunions. That's when I started going to the reunions.
That had to be a great feeling to find
Yes,
these
it
guys.
was. It was, yeah. Because we were pretty close. He was young, pretty young too, and I was being assistant bombardier. And yeah, it was really great.
You mentioned you were an assistant bombardier and assistant radio man. Did you ever have to take over those duties at any point?
No, no. I had, well, I don't know what I should say. No, really not. I set the radio up a few times for reasons, you know. But otherwise, no, I never had to take over completely, no. And of course, I had to check out the bombs and arm them and stuff like that. But as far as dropping the bombs, no.
What was it like just going mission after mission, knowing, you know, what you were headed into?
Well, everybody was scared stiff, you know. It was just because you knew what you were up against, you know. And it was a long day because they get you up real early, you know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know, go to the mess hall, and that's the only time you got a decent meal. Got fresh eggs and, well, anything you wanted. Otherwise, you know, you just got crap, you know. But and then you go to briefing, and depending on what you were, you go to the general briefing, and then you go to the radio man's briefing, the armor briefing, gunner's briefing, you know. And then you pick up all your equipment and go out to the plane. You know, pick up your heated suit and your heavy flying jackets and an oxygen mask and all your equipment, your mic, and then you get there, you set your guns in position, you know. Some of them were already in the turrets and stuff, but like the waist gunners, we had an original tail gun. They finally got them in like a turret, the tail gunners in the cheese, but and there was a gun in the radio room too, in the top hatch. And get prepared. We took off every 30 seconds. They shoot the flares and off you go. And the weather was always bad because I flew, you know, between December and May. So in England, we never seen any good weather at all. It was always, you know, flying through fog and clouds and rain. All they worried about whether it was clear over the target, you know. So.
When you were flying, were there many crews that were making their full 25 or 30 missions?
No, not very many. No. They called them the Lucky Bastards, you know. Yeah, they joined the Lucky Bastards Club. They never initiated me into it because they shipped me right off to the gunnery school, you know.
You should have been. You were already lucky.
Yeah. So they'd have a little dinner for him and give him a certificate, you know. So I never got one. No, we had a lot of them go down. You didn't make many friends outside of your crew because, you know, you had 3 crews to a barracks, and you know, they wouldn't be there next day, you know. Some would fly on a mission that you weren't on, and they wouldn't come back. Or same with the barracks next to you, you know. So you didn't get too friendly with them. So
It's an awful way to live, isn't it?
yes, it was, yeah. Of course, like I said, I went to town a lot. I had some girls in the restaurants who would save their ration coupons so they could have food for me when I come in. They treated me pretty good, yeah. All the English people treated us good. Yeah.
Going into town was quite a release from what you were.
Yeah, I couldn't wait to get out of there. That's all.
How far away was it?
I don't know. It was like I said, it was about 10 miles from Disney. And then you took the train. And of course, we got a 2 or 3 day pass. Then which you didn't have very often. you can go to London, you know. Otherwise, you just had to. I went to Ipswich once, but I like Norwich better, so.
Did we ask what bomb group you were with?
95th, 336 Bomb Squadron, 95th Bomb Group, 13th Combat Wing, which included the 100th and the 390th. The bloody 100th was in our wing. You've probably heard about them. Yeah.
How many?
Bob Fulkerton, did you know him? He came out to he just died a couple months ago. He was in the 100th. He went down on his 4th mission. He was a dentist down in Littleton. He just passed away. He was in the 100th group.
Do many people, young people, even realize there was such a group in this country?
I don't know. You mean now?
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of them come to our reunions, you know, but in fact, we have some, you know, some of our young are either children or grandchildren or people that are kind of taking over these you know, reunions and stuff because there's not many of us left, you know.
Are you glad to see that there's somebody to carry this on?
Yes, yeah. Well, in fact, the 8th Air Force, you know, the Historical Society, the one in Denver here, you know, the Colorado, most all our officers now are associate members, you know. Jim Rice, our president, and our historians, probably know Susan McConaughey, don't you? She comes to Regis too. And you know Gene, the one that owns the shop out here, the flight shop. They're our historians. So they're taking over, yeah.
Since we've seen you come to Regis for years, and we've heard from a lot of the veterans who were on B-17s or 24s and had similar types of experiences, what's your reaction as you hear their stories?
Well, it brings back a lot of memories, that's for sure. I mean, they're like Mike Queering. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. Yeah, it's.
Do you find there things that you could talk with only with somebody who went through the same types of things?
Well, I'm sure that's to really understand it, you'd have to. I mean, you can. I think I was like most of them. I never said nothing about it, even to my children. Like I was telling you before, what brought most of us out of it was that anniversary of the B-17 in Boeing. I mean, they put the red carpet out for us, and they showed us a good time, and we got acquainted with the other guys. But up until that time, my children didn't even know what I did during the war. You know, everybody was in. What's there to say? You know, everybody was in. You know, it was nothing. When I got out, I didn't go right home when I got out of the service. My brother had married a girl from Denver and Boulder, and I stayed here in this area for a couple of years before. Well, I went home for a visit. After about a month, I went home for a visit, but there was no homecoming or anything, you know. Because everybody was in. It was just, nobody was unusual. You know, everybody had to do something. Whether it was making the planes or making the ammunition or taking over the farms or whatever they had to do, you know, everybody had to do something.
We keep hearing that from guys saying just did what I was supposed to, but...
Yeah. My friend Leonard that's out there now, he was in Florida. He never got overseas, but he was training the pilots and engineers, you know, in the mechanism and, you know, emergencies and stuff. He trained them in Florida, you know. Everybody was important. We had great ground crews. And how about the guys loading those bombs every day? I mean, you know, what kind of a job is that, right? You know,
You talk a little bit about the ground crews. What did they have to do to repair these planes after they came back shot up?
oh, they were busy. Yeah, they were busy because they didn't look like this plane out here, I'll tell you. You know, they were dirty and full of oil and all over them, and there were holes and had to patch up the holes and change them engines, and you know, every so many hours put new engines in them. And of course they had a depot for the major work, but they did a lot of the minor work on our field. Yeah,
They place a lot of trust in those guys too.
right. The guys that packed the parachutes, you know, thank goodness I never had to use one, but not even a practice jump. I didn't want to. If I had to use it, I'd find out how to use it right. You know, when it come to that, well, you figure it out, right?
OJT.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those parachutes weren't like the things that you see bailing out into Mile High Stadium or
No,
something.
no, no. Just a little chest pack we clipped on, you know, onto a harness. Yeah. Just had it sitting somewhere near in case you needed it, that's all. Yeah.
I don't have any other specific, unless there's anything else that you can think of that you'd like to talk about.
I don't know. I'm just